Hello, we're back. It's quite a break because I was very ill. I'm pretty much over it now. Just a little bit of congestion here and there. You know how it is at the tail end. But we're back, and we're gonna read chapter 4. It's a little short, I think, ish, but I'm a little pressed for time today, so. If I can't read chapter 5 as well tonight, then I will do it another day this week. And we'll just do a double header to make up for, missing the last week. All right, we're going to hang tight for just like a minute, and then we'll get started. All right, let's get down to business. Okay. The Canticle for Leibowitz, chapter 4. You did the right thing, the abbot grunted at last. He had been slowly pacing the floor of his study for perhaps 5 minutes, his wide peasant face wearing a thick furrowed, muscular glower, while Father Cherokee sat nervously on the edge of his chair. Neither priest had spoken since Cherokee had entered the room in answer to his ruler's summons. Cherokee jumped slightly when Abbot Arcos finally grunted out the words. You did the right thing, the abbot said again, stopping in the center of the room and squinting at his prior, who finally began to relax. It was nearly midnight, and Arcos had been preparing to retire for an hour or two of sleep before matins and lauds. Still damp and disheveled from a recent plunge in the bathing barrel, he reminded Cherokee of a werebear, only incompletely changed into a man. He was wearing a coyote skin robe, and the only hint of his office was the pectoral cross that nestled in the black fur on his chest and flashed with candlelight whenever he turned toward the desk. His wet hair hung over his forehead, and with his short, jutting beard and his coyote skins, he looked at the moment less like a priest than a military chieftain, full of restrained battle anger from a recent assault. Father Cherokee, who came of baronial stock from Denver, tended to react formally to men's official capacities, tended to speak courteously to the badge of office, while not allowing himself to see the man who wore it, in this respect following the court customs of many ages. Thus, Father Cherokee had always maintained a formally cordial relationship with the ring and the pectoral cross, with the office of his abbot, but permitted himself to see as little as possible of Arcos the man. This was rather difficult under present circumstances, the Reverend Father Abbot being fresh out of his bath and padding around his study in his bare feet. He had, apparently, just trimmed a corn and cut too deep. One great toe was bloody. Cherokee tried to avoid noticing it, but felt very ill at ease. You do know what I'm talking about, Arcos growled impatiently. Cherokee hesitated. Would you mind, Father Abbot, being specific, in case it's connected with something I might have heard about, only in confession? Huh? Oh. Well, I'm bedeviled. You did hear his confession. I clean forgot. Well, get him to tell you again so you can talk, though heaven knows it's all over the Abbey anyhow. No, don't go see him now. I'll tell you, and don't answer on whatever's sealed. You've seen that stuff? Abbot Arcos waved toward his desk, where the contents of Brother Francis's box had been emptied for examination. Cherokee nodded slowly. He dropped it beside the road when he fell. I helped gather it up, but I didn't look at it carefully. Well, you know what he claims it is? Father Cherokee glanced aside. He seemed not to hear the question. All right, the abbot growled. Never mind what he claims it is. Just go look it over carefully yourself and decide what you think it is. Cherokee went to bend over the desk and scrutinized the papers carefully, one at a time, while the abbot paced and kept talking, seemingly to the priest, but half to himself. It's impossible! You did the right thing to send him back before he uncovered more. But of course, that's not the worst part. The worst part is the old man he babbles about. It's getting too thick. I don't know anything that could damage the case worse than a flood of improbable miracles. A few real incidents, certainly. It has to be established that the intercession of the Beatus has brought about the miraculous before canonization can occur. But there could be too much. Look at the Blessed Chang, beatified 2 centuries ago, but never canonized so far. And why? His order got too eager, that's why. Every time somebody got over a cough, it was a miraculous cure by the Beatus. Visions in the basement, evocations in the belfry. It sounded more like a collection of ghost stories than a list of miraculous incidents. Maybe 2 or 3 incidents were really valid, but when there's that much chaff, well... Father Cherokee looked up. His knuckles had whitened on the edge of the desk, and his face seemed strained. He seemed not to have been listening. I beg your pardon, Father Abbot. Well, the same thing could happen here, that's what, said the abbot, and resumed his slow padding to and fro. Last year there was Brother Noyan and his miraculous hangman's noose. Ha! And the year before that, Brother Smirnov gets mysteriously cured of the gout. How? By touching a probable relic of our blessed Leibowitz, the young louts say. And now, this Francis, he meets a pilgrim, wearing what? Wearing a kilt, the very burlap cloth they hooded Blessed Leibowitz with before they hanged him. And with what for a belt? A rope. What rope? Ah, the very same. He paused, looking at Cherokee. I can tell by your blank look that you haven't heard this bit yet. No, all right, so you can't say, no, Francis didn't say that. All he said was... Abbot Arcos tried to inject a slightly falsetto quality into his normally gruff voice. All Brother Francis said was, I met a little old man, and I thought he was a pilgrim, heading for the abbey because he was going that way, and he was wearing an old burlap sack tied around with a piece of rope, and he made a mark on the rock, and the mark looked like this. Arcos produced a scrap of parchment from the pocket of his fur robe and held it up towards Cherokee's face in the candle glow. Still trying, with only slight success, to imitate Brother Francis. And I couldn't figure out what it meant. Do you know? Cherokee stared at the symbols and shook his head. Represented in the book, and I don't know the names of the symbols, though I suspect we are about to learn, are 2 Hebrew characters. I wasn't asking you, Arcos gruffed in his normal voice. That's what Francis said. I don't know either. You do now? I do now. Somebody looked it up. That is Lamed, and that is Sad, Hebrew letters. Sad Lamed? No, right to left, Lamed Sad, an L and a TS sound. If it had vowel marks, it might be lutz, lots, lets, lates, lats, lits, anything like that. If it had some letters between those 2, it might sound like guess who? Libo. Oh, no. Oh, yes. Brother Francis didn't think of it. Somebody else thought of it. Brother Francis didn't think of the burlap hood and the hangman's rope. One of his chums did. So what happens? By tonight, the whole novitiate is buzzing with the sweet little story that Francis met the Beatus himself out there, and the Beatus escorted our boy over to where that stuff was and told him he'd find his vocation. A perplexed frown crossed Cherokee's face. Did Brother Francis say that? No! Arcos roared. Haven't you been listening? Francis said no such thing. I wish he had, by gum, then I'd have the rascal. But he tells it sweet and simple, rather stupidly, in fact, and lets the others read in the meanings. I haven't talked to him myself. I sent the rector of the memorabilia to get his story. I think I'd better talk to Brother Francis, Cherokee murmured. Do! When you first came in, I was still wondering whether to roast you alive or not. For sending him in, I mean. If you would let him stay out there in the desert, we wouldn't have this fantastic twaddle going around. But on the other hand, if he'd stayed out there, there's no telling what else he might have dug out of that cellar. I think you did the right thing to send him in. Cherokee, who had made the decision on no such basis, found silence to be the appropriate policy. See him, growled the abbot, then send him to me. Page break here, and I need water, and also to cough, so bear with me for a moment. Okay. It was about 9 on a bright Monday morning when Brother Francis rapped timidly at the door of the abbot's study. A good night's sleep on the hard straw pallet in his old familiar cell, plus a small bite of unfamiliar breakfast, had not perhaps done any wonders for starved tissue or entirely cleared the Sundays from his brain, but these relative luxuries had at least restored him to sufficient clarity of mind to perceive that he had cause to be afraid. He was, in fact, terrified, so that his first tap at the abbot's door went unheard. Not even Francis could hear it. After several minutes, he mustered the courage to knock again. Pardon me. Sorry, I almost just coughed. Benedicamus Domino. Deo gratias? Asked Francis. Come in, my boy, come in, called an affable voice, which, after some seconds of puzzling, he recognized with amazement to have been that of his sovereign abbot. You twist the little knob, my son, said the same friendly voice, after Brother Francis had stood frozen on the spot for some seconds, with his knuckles still in position for knocking. Yes. Francis scarcely touched the knob, but it seemed that the accursed door opened anyway. He had hoped that it would be tightly stuck. The Lord Abbot sent for me? Squawked the novice. Abbot Arcos pursed his lips and nodded slowly. Yes, the Lord Abbot sent for you. Do come in and shut the door. Brother Francis got the door closed and stood shivering in the center of the room. The abbot was toying with some of the wire-whiskered things from the old toolbox. Or perhaps it would be more fitting, said Abbot Arcos, if the Reverend Father Abbot were sent for by you, now that you have been so favored by Providence and have become so famous, eh? He smiled soothingly. Brother Francis laughed inquiringly. No, my lord. You do not dispute that you have won overnight fame? That Providence elected you to discover this, he gestured sweepingly at the relics on the desk, this junk box, as its previous owner no doubt rightly called it. The novice stammered helplessly and somehow managed to wind up wearing a grin. You are 17 and plainly an idiot, are you not? That is undoubtedly true, my lord abbot. What excuse do you propose for believing yourself called to religion? No excuse, Magister Meus. Ah, so then you feel that you have no vocation to the order? Oh, I do, the novice gasped. But you propose no excuse. None. You little cretin, I'm asking your reason. Since you state none, I take it you are prepared to deny that you met anyone in the desert the other day, that you stumbled on this junk box with no help, and that what I've been hearing from others is only what? Feverish raving? Oh no, Dom Marcos. Oh no, what? I cannot deny what I saw with my own eyes, Reverend Father. So you did meet an angel? Or was it a saint? Or perhaps not yet a saint, and he showed you where to look? I never said he was. And this is your excuse for believing yourself to have a true vocation, is it not? That this, shall we call him creature, spoke to you of finding a voice, and marked a rock with his initials, and told you it was where you were to look for, and then you looked under it, and this was there, eh? Yes, Don Marcos. What is your opinion of your own execrable vanity? My execrable vanity is unpardonable, my lord teacher. To imagine yourself important enough to be unpardonable is an even vaster vanity, roared the sovereign of the abbey. My lord, I am indeed a worm. Very well, you need only deny the part about the pilgrim. No one else saw such a person, you know. I understand he was supposed to have been headed in this direction, that he even said he might stop here, that he inquired about the abbey, yes, and where would he have disappeared to if he ever existed? No such person came past here. The brother on duty at that time in the watchtower didn't see him. Eh? Are you now ready to admit that you imagined him? If there are not really two marks on that rock where he... then maybe I might. The abbot closed his eyes and sighed wearily. The marks are there. Faintly, he admitted. You might have made them yourself. No, my lord. Will you admit that you imagined the old creature? No, my lord. Very well. Do you know what is going to happen to you now? Yes, Reverend Father. Then prepare to take it. Trembling, the novice gathered up his habit about his waist and bent over the desk. The abbot withdrew a stout hickory ruler from the drawer, tested it on his palm, and then gave Francis a smart whack with it across the buttocks. Deo gratias, the novice dutifully responded, gasping slightly. Care to change your mind, my boy? Reverend Father, I can't deny... Whack! Deo gratias! Whack! Deo gratias! 10 times was this simple but painful litany repeated, with Brother Francis yelping his thanks to heaven for each scorching lesson in the virtue of humility, as he was expected to do. The abbot paused after the 10th whack. Brother Francis was on tiptoe and bouncing slightly, tears squeezed from the corners of clenched eyelids. My dear Brother Francis, said Abbot Arcos, are you quite sure you saw the old man? Certain, he squeaked, steeling himself for more. Abbot Arcos glanced clinically at the youth, then walked around his desk and sat down with a grunt. He glowered for a time at the slip of parchment bearing the Hebrew letters. Who do you suppose he could have been? Abbot Arcos muttered absently. Brother Francis opened his eyes, causing a brief shed of water. Oh, you've convinced me, boy. Worse luck for you. Francis said nothing, but prayed silently that the need to convince his sovereign of his veracity would not often arise. In response to an irritable gesture from the abbot, he lowered his tunic. You may sit down, said the abbot, becoming casual, if not genial. Francis moved toward the indicated chair, lowered himself halfway into it, but then winced and stood up again. If it's all the same to the Reverend Father Abbot... All right, then stand. I won't keep you long anyhow. You're to go out and finish your vigil. He paused, noticing the novice's face brighten a little. "Oh, no, you don't," he snapped. "You're not going back to the same place. You'll trade hermitages with Brother Alfred and not go near those ruins again. Furthermore, I command you not to discuss the matter with anyone except your confessor or with me, although heaven knows the damage is already done. Do you know what you've started?" Brother Francis shook his head. "Yesterday being Sunday, Reverend Father, we weren't required to keep silent, and at recreation, I just answered the fellows' questions. I thought..." "Well, your fellows have cooked up a very cute explanation, dear son. Did you know that it was the blessed Leibowitz himself you met out there?" Francis looked blank for a moment, then shook his head again. "Oh, no, my lord abbot. I'm sure it couldn't have been. The blessed martyr would never do such a thing." "Wouldn't do such a what thing?" "Wouldn't chase after somebody and try to hit him with a stick that had a nail in one end." The abbot wiped his mouth to hide an involuntary smile. He managed to appear thoughtful after a moment. "Oh, I don't know about that now. It was you he was chasing, wasn't it?" "Yes, I thought so. You told your fellow novices about that part too." "Yes, eh? Well, you see, they didn't think that would exclude the possibility of him being the Beatus. Now I doubt if there are very many people that the Beatus would chase with a stick, but..." He broke off, unable to suppress laughter at the expression on the novice's face. "All right, son, but who do you suppose he could have been?" "I thought perhaps he was a pilgrim on his way to visit our shrine, Reverend Father." "It isn't a shrine yet, and you're not to call it that. And anyway, he wasn't, or at least he didn't. And he didn't pass our gates unless the watch was asleep, and the novice on watch denies being asleep, although he admitted feeling drowsy that day. So what do you suggest?" "If the Reverend Father Abbot will forgive me, I've been on watch a few times myself." "And?" "Well, on a bright day when there's nothing moving but the buzzards, after a few hours you just start looking up at the buzzards." "Oh, you do you? When you're supposed to be watching the trail?" "And if you stare at the sky too long, you just kind of blank out. You're not really asleep, but sort of preoccupied." "So that's what you do when you're on watch, do you?" the abbot growled. "No, not necessarily. I mean, no, Reverend Father, I wouldn't know it if I had. I don't think... A brother I relieved once was like that. He didn't even know it was time for the watch to change. He was just sitting there in the tower and staring up at the sky with his mouth open, in a daze." "Yes, and the first time you got stupefied that way, along will come a heathen war party out of the Utah country, kill a few gardeners, tear up the irrigating system, spoil our crops, and dump stones in the well before we can start defending ourselves. Why are you looking so... Oh, I forgot you were Utah-born before you ran away, weren't you? But never mind, you could just possibly be right about the watch. And how could he have missed seeing the old man, that is? How he could have missed seeing the old man, that is. You're sure he was just an ordinary old man, not anything more? Not an angel, not a Beatus?" The novice's gaze drifted ceilingward in thought, then fell quickly to his ruler's face. "Do angels or saints cast shadows?" "Yes, no. Well, how should I know? He did cast a shadow, didn't he?" "Well, it was such a small shadow, you could hardly see it." "What? Because it was almost noon." "Imbecile! I'm not asking you to tell me what he was. I know very well what he was, if you saw him at all." Abbot Arcos thumped repeatedly on the table for emphasis. "I want to know if you are sure beyond a doubt that he was just an ordinary old man." This line of questioning was puzzling to Brother Francis. In his own mind, there was no neat, straight line separating the natural from the supernatural order, but rather an intermediate twilight zone. There were things that were clearly natural, and there were things that were clearly supernatural, but between these extremes was a region of confusion, his own, the preternatural, where things made of mere earth, air, fire, or water tended to behave disturbingly like things. For Brother Francis, this region included whatever he could see but not understand. And Brother Francis was never sure beyond a doubt, as the abbot was asking him to be, that he properly understood much of anything. Thus, by raising the question at all, Abbot Arcos was unwittingly throwing the novice's pilgrim into the twilight region, into the same perspective as the old man's first appearance as a legless black strip that wriggled in the midst of a lake of heat illusion on the trail, into the same perspective as he had occupied momentarily when the novice's world had contracted until it contained nothing but a hand offering him a particle of food. If some creature more than human chose to disguise itself as human, how was he to penetrate its disguise, or suspect there was one? If such a creature did not wish to be suspected, would it not remember to cast a shadow, leave footprints, eat bread, and eat cheese? Might it not chew spice leaf, spit at a lizard, and remember to imitate the reaction of a mortal who forgot to put on his sandals before stepping on hot ground? Francis was not prepared to estimate the intelligence or ingenuity of hellish or heavenly beings, or to guess the extent of their histrionic abilities, although he assumed such creatures to be either hellishly or divinely clever. The abbot, by raising the question at all, had formulated the nature of Brother Francis's answer, which was to entertain the question itself, although he had not previously done so. "Well, boy?" My Lord Abbot, you don't suppose he might have been?" "I'm asking you not to suppose. I'm asking you to be flatly certain. Was he or was he not an ordinary flesh and blood person?" The question was frightening. That the question was dignified by coming from the lips of so exalted a person as his sovereign abbot made it even more frightening, though he could plainly see that his ruler stated it merely because he wanted a particular answer. He wanted it rather badly. If he wanted it that badly, the question must be important. If the question was important enough for an abbot, then it was far too important for Brother Francis, who dared not be wrong. I think he was flesh and blood, Reverend Father, but not exactly ordinary. In some ways, he was rather extraordinary." "What ways?" Abbot Arcos asked sharply. "Like how straight he could spit, and he could read, I think." The abbot closed his eyes and rubbed his temples in apparent exasperation. How easy it would have been flatly to have told the boy that his pilgrim was only an old tramp of some kind, and then to have commanded him not to think otherwise. But by allowing the boy to see that a question was possible, he had rendered such a command ineffective before he uttered it. Insofar as thought could be governed at all, it could only be commanded to follow what reason affirmed anyhow. Command it otherwise, and it would not obey. Like any wise ruler, Abbot Arcos did not issue orders vainly when to disobey was possible and to enforce was not possible. It was better to look the other way than to command ineffectually. He had asked a question that he himself could not answer by reason, having never seen the old man, and had thereby lost the right to make the answer mandatory. "Get out," he said at last, without opening his eyes. All right, that's the end of Chapter 4. Unfortunately, I don't have time for Chapter 5, so we'll have to stop there. Hang tight, one sec. Okay. Anyway, yes, I just double-checked. I do not have time, unfortunately. But I will read Chapter 5 later this week, either with or without Chapter 6. Probably with, because between the two of them, they're about probably the length of what I just read. I don't know when. What's today? Tuesday? So maybe Thursday or Friday, depending on what's going down in my life. But one or the other, one hopes. As always, thanks for hanging. Oh, Hagar, good to see you. Glad you made it. Sorry about the sound being a little funky on your end. I'll double check and make sure that it's not on my end when I listen to the VOD before I upload it to YouTube. As always, thanks for hanging out, and oh no, I lost my mic. There we go. Thanks, as always, to Aindulmedir for his use of the Lunar Lexicon, the Winter Scriptures, and Star Lore. Today we listened to the Lunar Lexicon, and you can find his tunes on Spotify or Bandcamp, and YouTube too. So go take a look and show him some love. And yeah, thanks, folks. I'll catch you next time. Take it easy.